To start with, I want to make the disclaimer that this is just one situation, and while some of the habits and behaviors I describe might not be positive, I'm generally very happy and content in my day-to-day life, and love my family and girlfriend deeply, and generally feel loved in return. This whole situation just has me in a weird place mentally, so if it comes off bad, it may simply be my description of events. I picked my younger sister of 3 years age difference on either end, up to take her to a family event. During the drive there, she told me that she needed to speak to me about something important, and proceeded to tell me that my family, at the bare minimum, I assume this is her, my older sister, and my mom and dad, if not possibly my 2 step-siblings of similar age to my older sister and me, doesn't believe that I'm being treated right by my girlfriend, that I deserve better, and specifically called out one incident a few weeks back. I'll get to that. My girlfriend and I have been together for close to 4 years now, and were best friends for many years before that. It might be all the usual cliches, but I truly love her. I feel comfortable around her no matter what we're doing, and I think she's the most attractive girl in the world. She makes me truly happy. However, she has a slew of different issues that are crucial to the incident at hand. Depression and severe social anxiety that have been very resistant to treatment. And she's autistic, making the social side of things more difficult and adding sensory issues into the mix. She doesn't engage much socially beyond hanging out with me and the occasional venture out for drinks with me and some friends. It's a shame because she's a joy to be around, and all my friends love her and would like to be her friend. But she refuses to really come out of her shell and take that plunge. This leads to the incident in question, where she came over to my parents with me. My whole aforementioned family was there, plus my older sister's boyfriend and my visiting grandparents from out of province. Between the social anxiety and the sensory issues, she spent the entirety of the time with noise-canceling earbuds in and didn't engage socially beyond responding to direct questions. This seemed to be the catalyst for the talk. Now, I'll be clear, this incident irked me, and this is one area I agree with my family's argument. I need to see more effort from her to engage with my family, especially when we've talked about marriage at some point down the line. However, the reason for my post is that a lot of the other points made were, frankly, nonsense to me, or at least seemed to be. I've seen so many stories, though, of people who listen to their family and make a mistake because the family was wrong, or the opposite, where the outside perspective is correct. So I wanted another perspective on this. I think there was a level of unfairness towards my girlfriend's general life situation versus mine. One of the points made was that I have a steady job, I might go do post-secondary still, and I'm more mature. My girlfriend has never held a job, doesn't know what she'll do for post-secondary, and is still in high school because she's in a specialty high school for learning disabilities, and is less mature in their eyes. But this is kind of unreasonable to me. She doesn't have a job because she's focusing on school, and she lives with her parents. She's not dependent on me financially. She might not have post-secondary planned, but honestly, I have about as much of a clue. And I'm more mature in their eyes because of childhood trauma that had me mature faster. Hardly feels like valid points to hold against someone who's only 20. In addition, it felt very dismissive of her mental health struggles and overinflated my own being a mild case of depression for a few years that I handled with mushrooms a couple of years back. The general theme felt like a knock on her for not having her progress in life be more in tune with a standard linear person's life, which doesn't reassure me that they'd feel all that strongly about me if my situation was less stable. My sister also mentioned that they feel like I'm being mistreated, but then naming odd things like, she doesn't give you gas money, I don't ask for it, or the relative lack of social interaction she engages in with me. Sure, I'd like more of that, and for her to try harder there, but mistreatment feels a bit excessive. I got the sense my family might have developed a bit of an inflated idea of my worth as well. Several times my sister mentioned I deserve better. I don't know where they got the idea that I'm either some prize catch and the bar is high, or that the bar is so low and I'm just the equivalent of an abuse victim. I'm a 21-year-old who lives with two guys my age in a rented townhouse. I make $38,000 and work night shift to boot, so I'm not doing well financially or in a desirable career. I'm not super tall or fit or attractive, mostly average at best. I have a car, but it's a used 13-year-old car. My personality's all right, I suppose. I'm funny enough, but even my family will tell me I'm annoying. I'd say probably 50% of the people I've met in my life find me some shade of annoying or irritating. So, not a stunning personality either. I don't know what's inflated their idea of me so high. My sister even said, "Everyone agrees you undervalue yourself." I think they're the ones with a skewed idea of how desirable I'd be to a partner. They're my family. They love me, so of course they'd think more highly of me than the average person. My sister also made an offhand comment that raised some suspicions. This could be nothing, but she mentioned wanting to be the one to break this to me because I know she doesn't have an issue with who she girlfriend is. My girlfriend is transgender, and I'm wondering if the hidden implication is that someone else might have an issue with her because of that. And maybe their opinion on this is fueled by that. Could be grasping at straws, but it set off my spidey sense. The final thing that irked me was that there was a comparison made to my older sister's boyfriend and how we've had similar talks with her about her boyfriend. For reference, this is a 24-year-old versus a 20-year-old actually has shared financial responsibilities with my sister and has still had periods of depending on her financially, also has no clue what he's doing for post-secondary, has said some wild derogatory things that set off all the alarm bells, and also doesn't engage sometimes in social events with my family, to a lesser frequency than my girlfriend, in fairness. You'll forgive me if the two don't really feel all that comparable. Now, of course, I mentioned that there were points about my girlfriend I agreed with. The first was, of course, the want for more effort in socialization. I don't want this to come off as so one-sided and biased that it makes my family's case seem dishonest regarding the matters at hand, unless it does feel dishonest to me. So here are some of the issues I have within the relationship. The lack of physicality on most ends has been a bit of a rough adjustment. I've always been a very physically affectionate person, and she doesn't care for it all too much. Public displays of affection are pretty much a no-go too. And though the intimacy life was good in my eyes and I loved being intimate and making her feel good, antidepressants unfortunately have led to a dead bedroom situation recently. Probably an average of once a month since March. I don't think there's any drive on her end to fix it. I love her enough that I'll make that sacrifice, and I've been trying to pivot towards showing my affection through acts of service instead, much like my dad, but this might be one point of friction in my family's eyes. There's also just not any willingness for basically anything physical. And I'm not talking about affection. Going on a walk sounds unappealing. Low-effort physical activities like mini-golf are too much, and so forth. I don't expect her to be in peak athletic shape or anything. I'm not ripped or anything. But it's to a point where, what level of engagement can you even have with life at that point? In general, most of my gripes, so to speak, are just about feeling a general lack of effort on a lot of fronts. I certainly feel loved, and it's not like she's constantly putting me down or laying her hands on me, nor any subtler things that would indicate intentional mistreatment. And I know that the obvious answer is to at least talk to her about all this. I would. I'm not in the habit of keeping secrets, but the same day I was told about this, she told me about her mental health being in a weird tipping point spot where something really good or really bad could swing it. I worry hearing this now could push her firmly into a serious downward spiral. This is just such a messy scenario to think about, and I don't have anyone else I can talk to about it. So any perspective would be appreciated. The last thing I want to say is I know a first relationship, especially a high school sweethearts type, usually doesn't last. My dad's made that point numerous times, to the point I honestly wonder if he mentally damned the relationship from the start. But no relationship lasts if you treat it like it's doomed from the get-go. Unless what I've written somehow makes the relationship seem blatantly toxic or unsalvageable, I'm willing to do what it takes to make it work. I try to be a good communicator, honest, and I'm willing to put in the effort and sacrifice necessary for the people I love, and that includes her. Just please try and look past the label of first young love and not dismiss it or call for breakups on that alone. Thank you in advance. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. This is a very good comment. It seemed to me he's mostly with her out of some sense of responsibility. I have to agree with OP's dad. High school relationships rarely last, and there are many reasons for it. The ones I've seen last in real life often involve both people taking some sort of break to figure out who they are as individuals before getting back together for the long term. Those who didn't do that eventually ended because they grew apart as individuals, or one felt limited by the relationship. A common theme in high school relationships is a lack of maturity to really think long term, like suggested above. Have you seriously thought about what the rest of your life looks like if you stay with her? She's unwilling to work on her social anxiety, doesn't see the dead bedroom as anything to fix, isn't giving serious thought to a future career, and isn't interested in forming closer bonds with your friends or family. But it sounds like all of these things are important to you. She may be a great partner otherwise, when you two are alone, but there's a whole world out there, and it sounds like you're resigning yourself to be tied to someone who isn't interested in anything outside of their own comfort zone. That's not to say people with anxiety or mental health issues should not be considered good partners. But you have to decide if their limitations and unwillingness to improve are an issue or not. Comment 2. Oof. I'll be honest, I wouldn't be very excited about your girlfriend either, if I were your family. Here you are, starting out in life, and you're with someone who seems to need a lot from you, but honestly doesn't seem to be making your life better. She's a drag on your social life because she won't get to know your friends. She sits at your family events with noise-canceling headphones in, making zero effort. You haven't indicated anything to suggest she'll be able to hold down a halfway decent job in the future. From your family's perspective, she's all take and no give. Plus, you've got no intimacy life. She won't so much as come for a walk with you. I mean, you say she makes you happy, but it's honestly not clear from this post how. It sounds like she just sits there. I'm sorry for her struggles, and I'm sure she's a lovely person. But if you were my son, I would be feeling pretty worried about this too. And I would really want to see and understand what it is she brings to your life, because from the outside, none of it looks that positive. Only you can answer the question of whether the pluses are worth the minuses. Hopefully, your girlfriend will actually step up a bit more in the future. But you should probably ask yourself why you don't think you merit a partner who will give you a little bit more. Now, for the update. 2 days after the family event, I invited my girlfriend over for a small dinner at my apartment to talk about my family's concerns. I thought a private dinner would be a good way for us to talk about everything. I even made her favorite meal, which is chicken parmesan, because I thought that would help make things comfortable for the conversation. She's mentioned before that cooking is a love language for her, so I wanted to set the right mood. As we ate, I brought up the comments my family made about her, focusing on how they thought she didn't fit in. She was listening quietly, nodding, but not saying much, which made me feel uneasy. I mentioned that I felt my family didn't understand her challenges, trying to frame it positively, but I think that might have been a mistake. Then, she suddenly put down her fork and asked if I thought she wasn't good enough for me. I assured her she was more than enough, but I struggled to find the right words to explain my family's perspective. Things changed when she said she had been feeling insecure about our relationship, especially with my family's opinions. I tried to reassure her, but she became visibly anxious and asked for some space. After dinner, she left quickly, took her keys, and didn't look back. I spent the night replaying that conversation in my head and worrying about her mental state. The next day, my sister texted me asking if I had heard from my girlfriend since the dinner. That made me more concerned, so I texted my girlfriend, but she didn't respond, making me more anxious. Later that week, I went to a family birthday party for my niece, knowing my girlfriend wouldn't be there. At the party, my family was talking about her, with some openly questioning why I was with her. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they just didn't get it. When my brother Jake made a comment about how I should date someone more normal, it hurt. I left the party early, feeling frustrated and upset, and decided to visit my girlfriend's apartment. When I arrived, the door was open, which was odd. I entered and noticed her stuff scattered around, suggesting she'd been in a rush. I found her phone on the kitchen counter, which was unusual because she's always attached to it. Panic set in as I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. I checked her social media and saw that she posted a picture of herself at a bar with friends, something she rarely does. The caption hinted at needing a break from everything without mentioning me directly. Feeling uneasy, I decided to go to the bar she posted about, hoping to find her there. When I arrived, I saw her sitting with a group of acquaintances, laughing and seemingly enjoying herself. I walked up and tried to greet her, but she looked surprised and slightly uncomfortable. We stepped outside to talk, and she explained that she needed time away from everything, including me. I expressed my concern and confusion about her sudden need for distance. She admitted that she felt overwhelmed by the pressure of my family's expectations and her struggles. The conversation escalated when she brought up how she had been considering ending things to focus on herself. We stood in silence, the weight of the situation hanging in the air. She finally said she needed to think about everything and walked back into the bar, leaving me outside. Edit. I spent a long time grappling with my feelings and relationship. After a few weeks, my girlfriend texted me saying she needed more time alone. I supported her decision. Eventually, she reached out about meeting to talk. We're working on our relationship and figuring things out together, taking it step by step. Am I the idiot for confronting my husband about his anger issues in front of our kids? My husband, a 42-year-old male, and I, a 42-year-old female, have been married for 13 years and together for 16 years. We have 2 kids ages 6 and 9. In the last 5 years, my husband increasingly yells at our children and me. He's becoming more grumpy, often speaks in an awful tone, and he has started putting me down. I am concerned about the long-term impact on my kids. I am emotionally starved and lonely, and am struggling to feel attraction to him. When I met my husband, he was sweet, kind, and gentle. His social skills were not great with women, and he had, and still has, trouble expressing or talking about his emotions. But he never yelled and was hardly ever grumpy. However, since his late 30s, my husband has started getting grumpier and yelling more and more. His parents yell a lot. They constantly put each other down, including in public, and they do not express kind words toward each other. I was appalled the first time I heard my husband speak on the phone to his parents. It was angry and rude, but you could tell he was receiving the same back. His relationship with his parents and the way his parents treat each other gave me significant pause before I decided to marry my husband. At that stage, he did not yell at me, and he was sweet. I was not marrying his parents, I was marrying him. Perhaps I was a sweet summer child. Most of the time, my husband brushes me off when I try to address it with him, or he gets angry at me about it. If he has a big blow-up, he might later occasionally express some regret. He is not interested in counseling, as he does not think he has a major problem. After we see his parents, who live out of town, he tends to get worse for a day or so. I am concerned his behavior is impacting our children. Our children are spirited kids and can be a wonderful challenge to parent. My husband's parenting style is to either give them what they want or yell at them. He constantly complains they never listen to him. I try to engage with my husband about intentional parenting, cognitive behavior strategies, parenting courses, and books. But he is disinterested, and now I'm just nagging. Our 6-year-old has had behavior regulation issues over the last year or so, and although some of that is due to an unrelated incident, it gets worse when my husband has a big blow-up. My 6-year-old yells and gets angry quickly, and having a parent who yells a lot is damaging. I worry it will keep getting worse. His parents gave my husband their example in his childhood and adulthood, and unless my husband decides to proactively address the issue, I don't know what to do. He is now different from the man I married, but I made vows to love and stay with this man forever. He has lots of amazing qualities. He is intelligent, he works hard, he does amazing activities with our children, and he can be a lot of fun. I think I probably need some strategies to try to get him to acknowledge the problem. If anyone has ideas, I would be appreciative. I worry it's too late and he will not change. I worry I will have to try to mitigate his behavior for another 10 years because there are no other realistic options. At least if it happens while our children are under my roof, I can monitor and interrupt as best I can with positive parenting. I am not really expecting answers, and certainly no magic answers, but writing this has made me feel both a little better and a little sadder. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Have you tried having this conversation while on a walk? It often really helps with boys and men who are less able to talk about their emotions, as they can focus on the path ahead and not feel trapped. Ultimately, you can only lead a horse to water, OP. You can't change him. You can only do what you can to highlight things to him. If he doesn't want to change, he sadly won't. Good luck. Comment 2. It sounds like he is struggling too with his life. What you're observing is just the symptom. Not that his behavior isn't a problem, but to focus on that won't get anywhere because something is driving it. Now for the update. My husband has always been pretty chill, but a week after my last post, things got super bad at my in-laws' place. Like, you know how every family has their drama? Well, this one was like a family dinner on steroids. So my husband and I went over there for dinner, and honestly, he was so quiet. Usually he can't shut up. He's the life of the party, the guy everyone looks to when he walks in. But this time, nothing. Just crickets. And then there's his family. I mean, I love them, I really do. But these two are always ready to explode. They were at it again over the remote, of all things. I mean, really? A remote? My husband tried to step in and calm things down, but then he lost it and started yelling at his dad, in front of me and the kids. I was sitting there shocked while his mom just got up and left. It was so awkward that I tried to make a joke about the remote, like lighten the mood a bit. But my husband shot me this look that said, "Not now." So, we wrapped up dinner and left early. The drive home was silent, like really silent. I could hear the crickets from the backyard. When we got home, I noticed our son was really quiet too. I asked my husband if he was okay, and he just ignored me and went straight to the bedroom. I found my son in the living room, just staring blankly at the TV, like he was in a trance or something. I plopped down next to him and asked if he wanted to talk, but he just shrugged like a little adult. The next day, I thought I'd take the kids to the playground to get their minds off things. My daughter was having a blast, but my son kept looking for his dad like he was lost or something. I texted my husband to check in and see how he was doing, but he didn't respond until late that night. He came home looking even more drained than usual and went straight to bed without even touching his dinner. I decided enough was enough. I had to confront him. So, I asked him about his behavior during the dinner and how it affected the kids. He just exploded. He started yelling about feeling trapped and how I just didn't get his family dynamics. I tried to explain myself, but he wasn't having it. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. It was from my husband, and it said he needed space and was going to stay at a hotel. I called the hotel to confirm, and yeah, he had already checked in and refused to take my calls. So, I did what any wife would do. I went to my in-laws. I figured if anyone could talk some sense into him, it would be them. They were surprisingly calm. They said they had noticed his mood swings, but didn't know how to help. I mentioned the hotel stay, and his dad said it might be a wake-up call for him, more like a slap in the face. Later that week, I got a text from my husband saying he wanted to meet. We arranged to meet at this diner near our home, like a date from way back. He looked different, more put together but still tense. Then he dropped this news. He's been considering separation because of his anger issues. I was like, what? He told me he's been seeing a therapist on his own. He's trying to face his childhood stuff and knows he needs to change. I can't even describe how I felt. It was like a mix of relief and fear. We talked about us, and he handed me this small box. Inside was a ring he had bought before all this craziness. He said he didn't know if we could go back to how things were, but he wanted to try. The next day, my son's school called. They had concerns about his behavior, so I decided to focus on my son and see how things went with my husband. He seems committed to changing, but I guess time will tell. Edit. It's been 2 months since that diner meeting. My husband is still in therapy, and we've been doing couple sessions as well. Our son has improved, and his school noted positive changes. Family therapy has been tough but necessary. We're all making progress, and for the first time in years, I feel hopeful. Am I the idiot for confronting my wife's flirty friend and telling him to back off? My wife and I were both relatively quiet homebodies throughout our dating relationship, and mostly before we got together as well. When we got engaged at 25, we both agreed we didn't want big bachelor or bachelorette parties. For hers, she decided to have dinner with 3 to 4 bridesmaids when they were in town about a month before the wedding. Dinner turned into drinks, and drinks turned into bar hopping for a few hours, which was fine, and I wasn't surprised to hear about that the next day. Fast forward 12 years, and one night we were out on a date, and while she was pretty tipsy, she mentioned having kissed the bartender during her bachelorette. I didn't react, but asked to hear more because that was news to me. The look on her face suggested she'd suddenly remembered that she'd never told me, and I could practically see the gears in her head turning as she weighed what to say for the rest of the conversation. What eventually came out was that her maid of honor had come prepared to make it a bigger party than she expected, and one of the main events was a list of dares and a scavenger hunt, along with strangers autographing her shirt. For any dares she refused, they would cut her bachelorette t-shirt a little shorter from the bottom as an incentive to do more of them. She couldn't remember the specifics of all the dares, but it sounded like many were fairly innocuous. Find a police officer to sign her shirt, stand on a chair and shout something to the bar, get advice from an older couple, etc. But there were at least 4 that she said she crossed off at the start of the game as going too far and has no recollection of what those were. There were a few things that were borderline, which she said she didn't think would be a problem while she was drinking, but which she regretted the next day. Those included kissing the bartender, which she said she thought was fine because they were both women, taking turns doing body shots on the table, and letting a random guy sign the shirt on her breast in exchange for him buying her a shot. Her drinks were already paid for by her friends, so it's not like she benefited from that exchange. When she woke up the next morning, she said she felt badly enough about it that she threw away the shirt so I wouldn't see it and decided to keep the whole thing a secret from me. We had a 3 to 4 hour car trip the next day, so I'm sure we spent time talking about her party, but clearly she was holding back. I understand that in the grand scheme of things that can go wrong at a bachelorette party, these were pretty minor, but I don't love them, and the secret keeping definitely makes me uncomfortable, especially as it connects to a pattern of dishonesty she developed around drinking once she started developing an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and also knowing that sometimes she had too much to drink with coworkers while traveling for work conferences after we were married. I sat on my feelings for a day or so after those revelations, trying to decide whether and how much I felt bothered by them, and eventually decided to share with her that I was feeling a little uncomfortable thinking about it. I'm not the type to lash out or really even get angry. I just wanted to talk through those feelings with her. At first, she was supportive, but she quickly turned defensive and angry about it. She's always struggled with shame from growing up in an oppressively religious environment. So she easily slipped into a shame spiral about it and got angry at me for making her feel bad. We tried a few different times to have better conversations about it, and they mostly went the same, some better than others, but overall, not really productive. Eventually, we had one more, where I told her I thought we'd probably said all there was to say, except I didn't feel like she'd ever really apologized for it. That turned into the biggest fight of all, with a lot of "how dare you ask me to apologize" and "why are you making me feel this way, it's so cruel." At that point, I decided that the closure wasn't worth the fight, and we just moved on with our lives. But as time went on, it continued to tug at the back of my mind, And I never really forgot about it, and never really got closure. And the questions kept swirling in my mind about whether I could trust her story and what she might have left out. It didn't help that when she was disclosing, it was very clear how carefully she was choosing her words and deciding what to say, which makes it hard to trust that it's the whole story. Now we're seeing a couples therapist, not really because of this, just for general relationship things like communication and resentment. And this history has come up for us to unpack. It started out with the same dynamic as before. Supportive at first, turning defensive and angry, but we're overall in a better place as far as emotional regulation and shame spiraling are concerned. So we're making better progress. The therapist has made clear that whatever my feelings are, they're valid, and only I can decide whether or not I'm okay with something. And that makes sense, but I still struggle with the fact that on the surface, these really don't seem like huge betrayals. But as they've grown over time, they seem to be impacting me like a big betrayal. I think the secret keeping is as big a part of that feeling as the dares themselves, but it all blends together. I am open to hearing other perspectives. What would you think or feel if you were in our shoes? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'm from the UK, and to be honest, these kinds of dares were incredibly common at hen parties. Everything is a bit more respectful now, but this sort of thing was pretty standard. It doesn't make it right, but it was accepted. For me, it wouldn't be a big deal if I were told about it the day after it happened. Like I said, it was pretty standard behavior. It's the conscious decision to lie that would bother me, and I think that's where your problem is. Because if she can lie about this for so long, how can you trust anything you've been told? Comment 2. I think you should allow yourself to feel the full extent of your emotions. In the past, I found myself not limiting my emotions so as not to make my partner sad that they got me upset, which ended up doubling how mad I was when it fully came out. Your wife sounds like she's dodging accountability, and you're letting her off the hook by ignoring that, which can ultimately erode your love and trust for her. Is that worth not making her feel bad in the short term? Now for the update. A few days after my last therapy session with my wife, she texted me asking if I could pick up dinner from our favorite Italian place. I agreed and headed out to the restaurant, my mind drifting to our ongoing therapy and how we were working to rebuild trust. While waiting for the food, I overheard a conversation between two women at a nearby table. One woman mentioned seeing my wife out at a bar last weekend with a group of friends. My ears perked up at that, and I listened further, catching snippets about a wild night that involved dancing and drinking. My wife had said she was spending the night with a friend, and this new info didn't sit right with me. After picking up dinner, I decided to confront her about where she really was that night. We sat down to eat, and I casually brought up the conversation I overheard. Her expression shifted, and she looked nervous, which raised more questions for me. She stumbled over her words, claiming she was with her friend, but didn't mention any bar. I pressed her for details about the night, specifically who was there and what they did. She finally admitted to going to a bar, but insisted nothing happened beyond dancing. To lighten the mood, I suggested we go out with friends to a birthday party the following weekend. At the party, I noticed my wife getting overly friendly with a guy named Mark, who seemed too touchy for comfort. I tried to brush it off, but Mark's constant laughter and physical closeness to my wife made me really uncomfortable. During a game of beer pong, I overheard Mark jokingly asking if my wife would join him on a trip to a music festival. My mind raced, and I decided to keep a close eye on their interactions for the rest of the night. Later, I caught them in a corner talking closely, and my wife seemed to be laughing a little too hard at his jokes. Feeling the emotions rising, I stepped outside for fresh air, trying to calm down. I bumped into Mark as I exited, and we exchanged awkward small talk about the party. I noticed his lingering gaze towards my wife through the window, and I could feel the anger boiling inside me. After a while, I headed back inside, determined to confront the situation. I found my wife surrounded by friends, but Mark was still close, and the atmosphere felt tense. I interrupted their conversation, making a joke that fell flat, and I could see my wife's face fall. I decided to leave the party early, and my wife tried to convince me to stay, but I insisted we needed to talk. On the drive home, she kept asking what was wrong, but I remained silent, keeping my thoughts to myself. Once we arrived, I brought up the conversation from the party, and we ended up arguing about Mark's behavior. The argument escalated, and she accused me of being overly jealous, which infuriated me. In a moment of frustration, I revealed I overheard her story about being at the bar last weekend and how it felt like a lie. She reacted defensively, denying she did anything wrong. I decided to take a more drastic approach to regain some control over the situation. The next day, I started gathering info about Mark, looking through social media to find connections. I discovered he had a history of flirting with married women. I contacted a friend who knew Mark to gather details about his character. Armed with this info, I decided to confront Mark directly about his behavior towards my wife. I found Mark at a local bar later that week during happy hour and approached him confidently. The confrontation was tense, with me accusing Mark of crossing boundaries and disrespecting my marriage. He laughed it off, thinking it was a joke, but my serious tone caught him off guard. I left Mark with a warning, making it clear to stay away from my wife. Our next therapy session was coming up, and I wondered how to address the latest developments without causing another explosion. As we sat in therapy, I decided to share everything that happened, prepared for the fallout. To answer a few questions, my wife was with a friend who has a history of questionable choices when it comes to relationships. This friend was the one who initially lied about their whereabouts. My wife knew I had a friend who knew Mark, which is why she seemed nervous when I confronted her. My reaction to Mark was out of fear of losing my wife again. In therapy, we discussed the insecurity that the recent revelation about the bar visit had caused me. The trust issues we had been working on were tested again, and we are still trying to navigate through it all. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.